Welcome to the deep dive.
Ah,
You sent us some really fascinating excerpts from the 1986 Dhrupad Annual Journal.
yeah.
And honestly, I'm excited to kind of get a crash course in this ancient indie musical tradition.
Mm,
I have to admit, before kind of diving into these materials, Dhrupad was just a word I'd heard,
right.
but never really understood.
It's certainly a world of its own.
Yeah,
By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a solid grasp not only of Drupad's unique characteristics,
right.
but also its historical context and how it's experiencing a resurgence in popularity today.
Perfect. So let's start with that word itself, Dhrupad. What's the story behind the name?
Well, the word Drupad is a fusion of two Sanskrit words, Dhruva, meaning unchanging or eternal,
Right.
and Pada, meaning lyric. Right from the name, you get a sense of timelessness and connection to something bigger.
So it's more than just a catchy melody.
Right.
There's a deeper meaning embedded right there in the name.
Exactly. That sense of the eternal is also reflected in the lyrical content. Traditionally, Drupad lyrics focus on manifestations of the divine,
Okay.
further emphasizing that link to the spiritual realm.
That's fascinating. And it makes me wonder about the origins of Drupad. Was it always connected to this spiritual element, or did it develop over time?
Well, one key figure played a huge role in shaping Drupad as we know it, Raja Man Singh Tomar of Gwalior.
Okay.
His patronage, beginning in the 16th century, was instrumental in refining and establishing Drupad as a distinct form.
So we have a king to thank for this entire musical tradition. I'm picturing lavish royal courts, musicians performing for the king's entertainment.
While the royal court setting is accurate, Raja Man Singh Tomar's vision for Drupad went far beyond mere entertainment. He saw it as a way to connect with the divine, a form of musical devotion. He even developed a dance form specifically designed to be accompanied by Drupad.
Hold on, a Drupad dance form. Why have I never heard of this?
Sadly, it's much less known today. But its existence tells us how deeply Raja Man Singh Tomar believed in Drupad's expressive potential. He saw it as a complete art form,
Right.
encompassing music, poetry, and movement.
That makes his contribution even more significant.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the name, the divine inspiration, the royal backing. But what about the sound?
Yes.
I need to know what sets Dhrupad apart from other Indian musical traditions I might be familiar with.
Imagine a master musician, completely focused, drawing you into a meditative soundscape with each note. That's the essence of Drupad.
You've definitely piqued my curiosity. Break it down for me. What are the defining characteristics of Dhrupad's sound?
One core element is the alap, an extended, unmetered improvisation on a raga,
Okay.
the melodic framework. Think of it as a gradual unfolding, a deep exploration of the raga's essence. It's not about jumping into a catchy tune, it's about savoring the nuances and complexities of the melody.
So it's more about the journey than the destination, so to speak.
Exactly. Drupad takes its time, allowing the musicians to really delve into the emotional depths of the raga.
That explains the meditative quality you mentioned earlier.
Mm.
It sounds like Dhrupad demands a different kind of listening, a slower, more contemplative approach.
Absolutely. And to enhance the expressiveness, Drupad singers employ specific techniques like mind, a gliding between notes, and gamak, subtle ornamentation that adds layers of emotion.
Okay.
Then there's the vocal delivery itself. Drupad singers are renowned for their deep, resonant voices and precise control.
Wow, it sounds incredibly intricate. I'm starting to understand why this tradition has captivated listeners for centuries.
Yeah.
But from the research you sent, it seems like certain instruments play a key role in Dhrupad.
Yeah.
Tell me more about them.
You're right. There are 4 instruments that are traditionally associated with Drupad.
Okay.
The ben, the rabab, the surshringar, and the surbahar.
Okay, let's unpack these one by one.
Okay.
Starting with the ben. What kind of instrument is it?
The ben is a stick zither, with an incredibly ancient lineage in Indian music. Imagine a long wooden stem with resonators, often gourds, attached to each end. There are usually 7 strings, 4 for playing the melody, and 3 providing the drone.
A stick zither. Definitely not something you see every day.
Right.
So it's not your typical guitar.
Not quite. The ben is held over the shoulder, and its sound is incredibly resonant and powerful. It's known for its ability to sustain notes for extended periods,
Right.
making it perfect for the slow, intricate alaps that are so central to Drupad.
I see. So the instrument itself seems to embody that sense of timelessness and depth we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how the choice of instrument can shape the entire character of a musical style.
It really does. And speaking of instruments shaping style, the rabab presents some interesting challenges for Dhrupad musicians. It really does.
Yeah.
And speaking of instrument shaping style, the rabab presents some interesting challenges for Dhrupad musicians.
Oh, tell me more about the rabab and its connection to Dhrupad. What makes it stand out from the ben?
Well, the rebab is a lute that came to India from Central Asia. Unlike the ben, which can sustain notes beautifully, the rebab has what we call lower sound continuity.
Okay.
This means the notes decay more quickly, making it harder to play those long, drawn-out phrases that are so characteristic of Dhrupad.
That's fascinating. So how did Dhrupad musicians adapt to this challenge? Did they change their playing style or modify the instrument?
They did. Both Dhrupad performers on the rebab developed techniques to maximize sustain, often using a rapid bowing style to create the illusion of longer notes.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, the rebab itself evolved,
Okay.
leading to the development of two other instruments. You mentioned the surshringar and the surbahar.
Ah, so the rebab is like the ancestor of this whole family of Dhrupad instruments.
Hmm.
Tell me about the surshringar. How did it evolve from the rabab?
As Dhrupad musicians explored the rebab's possibilities, they realized they needed an instrument that could better capture the subtleties of the alap.
Okay.
So they developed the surshringar, a fretless lute known for its sweet, delicate sound.
Fretless.
Yeah,
That means you can slide between notes more smoothly.
exactly. This allows for a greater range of expression, particularly for those gliding means and subtle gamakas that are so essential to Dhrupad's emotional depth.
So the surshringar is all about bringing out those nuanced details, those shades of feeling within the music.
Yeah.
What about the surbahar? What niche did it fill in the Dhrupad soundscape?
Well, the surbahar is a fretted lute, and you can think of it as the ben's bolder cousin. It was developed as a response to the growing interest in Dhrupad. Traditionally, ben players were very secretive about their art, often teaching only within their families.
Right.
But as more people wanted to learn to play in that style, the surbahar emerged as a more accessible alternative.
So it's like they democratized the ben sound, making it available to a wider audience.
Yes, and it had the added benefit of greater volume,
Right.
making it ideal for larger performances.
It's amazing how each instrument tells a story, not just about the music itself, but also about the people who played it and the evolution of the tradition. But, as we've been talking about Dhrupad's lineage, one name keeps coming up in the research, the Dagar family. What makes them so significant in the world of Dhrupad?
The Dagars are practically royalty in the Dhrupad world. For centuries, they've been masters of this tradition, passing their knowledge down through generations. Their style emphasizes the intricacies of lap,
Right.
creating a profoundly spiritual experience for both performer and listener.
It's incredible to think about that unbroken chain of knowledge stretching back centuries. What are some of the key characteristics that define the Dagar style?
Well, one defining feature is their use of 10 specific swara laksanas. These are highly refined musical flourishes that add incredible depth and texture to their performance.
Okay.
These flourishes even have poetic names like Akar, meaning form, Dagar, their family name,
Wow.
and Sfurti, which translates to inspiration.
Wow, they even named a technique after themselves. Talk about leaving your mark on a tradition. It sounds incredibly complex, though I can't imagine the level of skill and dedication it takes to master those techniques.
It's certainly a lifelong pursuit. Many Dhrupad musicians, especially those in lineages like the Dagars, begin training at a very young age under the guidance of a guru.
So it's not just about learning notes and rhythms, it's about immersing yourself in a tradition, a way of life.
Exactly. The Guru Shisha Parampara, as it's called in India, is crucial to transmitting the essence of Dhrupad. The Guru imparts not only musical techniques, but also the disciplined devotion and respect for the tradition
Right.
that are essential to becoming a true Dhrupad musician.
It's almost like a spiritual apprenticeship. And it makes me think, with all this talk of tradition and ancient lineage, is Dhrupad still relevant today? Is it just a museum piece, or is it a living, evolving art form?
It's definitely not a museum piece. While Dhrupad did face a decline in popularity during the mid-20th century,
Okay.
likely due to the rise of faster, more modern musical forms, it's experiencing a remarkable resurgence.
That's heartening to hear. What's driving this renewed interest in Dhrupad?
There are a few factors at play. Dedicated musicians, like the Dagar brothers,
Right.
have played a key role in bringing Dhrupad to international audiences. And festivals like the Benaras Dhrupad Mela have
Yeah.
created platforms for both established masters and up-and-coming artists to showcase their art.
I remember reading about the Benaras Dhrupad Mela in the research you provided. It sounded quite impressive. What makes it so special?
Well, for one thing, it's completely free for attendees,
Oh, wow.
making it accessible to everyone. It takes place in Varanasi, a city known for its rich musical heritage,
Okay.
and attracts a diverse crowd, including international attendees,
Wow.
all drawn to the power of Dhrupad.
Free and open to all.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But who organizes and funds an event like that? It must take a lot of resources to pull off.
It wouldn't be possible without the dedication of individuals, organizations, and the Varanasi community itself. The Maharaja of Varanasi, a huge supporter of Dhrupad, plays a key role along with organizations like the Sanjit Natak Academy in New Delhi. That's inspiring. It sounds like a real collective effort to keep this tradition alive.
But are there any individuals aside from the Maharaja who have made significant contributions to the Dhrupad revival?
Absolutely. One name that stands out is Dr. Lalmani Mishra, the former dean of the Faculty of Music and Fine Arts at Benaras Hindu University.
Okay.
He was instrumental in organizing the very first Dhrupad Mela back in 1975.
So someone with both a deep understanding of music and a passion for education. That's a powerful combination.
Yeah.
It must have been quite a feat to launch that first festival.
I'm sure it was. But Dr. Mishra's vision and dedication helped pave the way for the Dhrupad Mela to become the success it is today.
It's a reminder that individuals can make a real difference in preserving and promoting the arts they care about. And, as we talk about this revival, it makes me think about the spiritual aspect of Dhrupad. It's not just about entertainment, it's about connecting with something deeper, something transcendent. Do you think that's part of what draws people to Dhrupad, especially in today's fast-paced world? I think you're onto something. In a world that's constantly bombarding us with stimuli, Dhrupad offers a sanctuary, a space for quiet contemplation. Its focus on exploring the essence of a raga, on creating a meditative soundscape, speaks to a universal human desire for connection, for something that goes beyond the everyday.
That makes me curious about the experience of the musicians themselves. What kind of training and dedication does it take to reach that level of mastery, to be able to channel that spiritual depth through their music?
It's a path that requires immense discipline and dedication. Remember, Dhrupad is all about delving deep into the heart of a raga, which demands a profound understanding of melodic structure and years of practice to master those intricate techniques.
It's not something you pick up over a weekend workshop.
Not at all. It's a lifelong pursuit, a journey of continuous learning and refinement. And as we discussed earlier, the Guru Shishya tradition plays a crucial role in this process. The Guru guides the student not only in terms of musical technique, but also in cultivating the mental and spiritual discipline required to become a true Dhrupad musician.
It sounds like a profound commitment both for the teacher and the student. And it makes me appreciate even more the legacy of families like the Dagars, who have dedicated generations to preserving and transmitting this art form.
Absolutely. They embody the spirit of Dhrupad, passing the torch from one generation to the next, ensuring that this ancient tradition continues to resonate in the modern world.
Speaking of the Dagars, you mentioned earlier that their style is particularly renowned for its emphasis on alap. Could you elaborate on what makes their approach to alap so unique?
The Dagars are true masters of nuance and detail. They approach the alap with a sense of spaciousness, allowing each note to unfurl slowly and deliberately. They weave those 10 specialized svara laksanas into a tapestry of sound that is both intricate and deeply moving.
I can only imagine the level of breath control and vocal stamina required to sustain those long, drawn-out notes. It must be as much a physical discipline as a musical one.
You're absolutely right. Dhrupad singing, especially in the Dagar style, demands incredible physical and mental control. It's about breath work, vocal technique, and a deep understanding of the music's emotional and spiritual core.
It sounds like a form of meditation in itself, both for the performer and the listener.
You could say that the level of concentration and focus required to perform Dhrupad is akin to a meditative state.
Right.
And for the listener who's willing to surrender to the music's slow unfolding, it can be equally transformative.
It makes you appreciate the dedication and artistry of these musicians even more.
It truly does. Dhrupad is a testament to the power of human creativity and the enduring appeal of an art form that connects us to something larger than ourselves.
Now, before we wrap up, is there anything else you think we should know about Dhrupad? We've covered a lot of ground, but I'm always eager to learn more.
Well, I think it's important to remember that Dhrupad isn't a monolithic tradition. It has evolved over centuries with different schools or gharanas developing their own distinctive styles.
Gharanas. Is that like having different branches within the Dhrupad family tree?
Exactly. Each Gharana has its own unique approach to alap ornamentation, and even the selection of ragas. It's what keeps the tradition vibrant and alive.
So it's not about rigid adherence to a fixed set of rules.
Mhm.
There's room for individual expression and creativity within the tradition.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of Drupad. It's a living, breathing art form that continues to evolve while staying true to its core principles.
That makes me wonder, are there any specific Quranas that are particularly prominent today? Besides the Dagars, of course.
Definitely. Aside from the Dagar Gharana, another influential one is the Darbhanga Gharana,
Okay.
which originates from the region of Darbhanga in Bihar.
Okay. So geographically distinct from the Dagar tradition, which was centered around Gwalior. What sets the Darbhanga Gharana apart?
They're known for their rich use of ornamentation and gamakas, those subtle flourishes that add depth and emotion to the music.
Right.
They also have a particular focus on alaps that create a sense of spiritual serenity and contemplation.
So in some ways, similar to the Dagar style in its emphasis on the meditative qualities of Dhrupad.
Yes, there are definite similarities in their overall approach, but the Darbhanga Gharana has its own unique flavor,
Right.
a certain richness and intricacy that sets it apart.
It makes me wonder what other Gharanas might exist waiting to be discovered and appreciated.
You're right, there's a whole world of Drupad waiting to be explored.
Yeah.
Each Gharana holds a piece of this rich tradition, contributing to its diversity and enduring legacy.
It's fascinating how a single musical tradition can encompass so much variety and depth.
It speaks to the power of human creativity and the enduring appeal of Drupad's spiritual and artistic essence.
You know, this whole deep dive has really opened my ears to a whole new world of musical expression. But one thing that keeps coming back to me is that intriguing fact about Raja Mansingh Tamar developing a dance form specifically for Dhrupad music.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned it earlier, and it's just stuck with me.
It's a shame that this Drupad dance form is so little known today.
Do we know anything about how it was performed or what kind of movements were involved?
We do have some clues. Research mentions a remarkable discovery, the ruins of a special stage called a Rasagra in Gwalior,
Okay.
believed to have been built by Raja Mansingh Tomar himself.
Wow, a stage built just for Dhrupad dance. That's dedication.
It really is. And the stage itself is a fascinating piece of architectural history. It's circular in shape, about 96 feet in circumference, with a smooth, polished floor that was said to be as reflective as glass.
A circular stage. I'm picturing swirling movements, a sense of continuous flow, perhaps mirroring the cyclical nature of the ragas themselves.
That's a great observation. The circular shape could very well have been intentional, reflecting the cyclical nature of the music and the cosmos.
What about the music itself? Would there have been a specific ensemble for this Dhrupad dance?
Most likely. The stage design includes 4 small platforms and 4 minarets surrounding the central performance area.
So plenty of space for musicians. I can almost hear the sound of the Ben the Rabab and the Pakawaj drums echoing through that space, blending with the dancers' movements.
It must have been quite a spectacle. Imagine the visual artistry of the dancers combined with the powerful resonant sounds of Drupad.
You've painted quite a picture. It makes you wonder what other treasures might be hidden away, waiting to be rediscovered.
That's the allure of history and archaeology, isn't it? There's always more to uncover, more to learn. This deep dive has given us a glimpse into the world of Drupad, but it's really just the beginning.
It definitely feels that way. I'm left with a sense of awe and a thirst for more. I'm ready to dive into a whole library of books and recordings on Dhrupad.
That's the beauty of these deep dives. They spark curiosity and inspire us to explore further.
Well, you've certainly succeeded in that. Who knows, maybe someday we can do another deep dive, perhaps focusing on the lyrical content of Dhrupad or those specific musical techniques like the Svaralaksanas.
I'd love that. Until then, keep listening, keep learning, and keep diving deep.